Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us for our Reflections from Grace. Last Tuesday, we began looking at a process in facing life-changing decisions. And as a Christian, many of us are going to go through a change of venue, a change of decision that we really need to seek God's will for. And I believe this is probably not a process that everyone would go through, but it is a process that I have used in my life, and I thought it might be helpful to you today. Of course, last week or last Tuesday, we saw that we need to have a yielded will. One of the main important things is having your will set aside to whatever God's will is for the decision in which you're seeking His leadership in. And we also looked at biblical revelation using the Bible. Psalm 119, 105, Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. We looked at that as a biblical revelation. And we also looked at in the book of Proverbs also, where it says, in the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. And I think I honed in a little bit on that aspect there as far as seeking a godly individual who you respect spiritually to be able to help you and to guide you and to counsel you as you go through these decisions. But today I'd like to just finish up in my 3-step process or 6-step process with 3 more steps. I will see number 4 in this process is I believe it's important to impose a time limitation. Impose a time limitation. In Proverbs 27:1, the Bible tells us, Boast not thyself for tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. A common mistake oftentimes in someone trying to discern God's will is that they will leave it open-ended, and it can go on for years and years trying to seek a direction or guidance from the Lord. But I think it's important to impose a time limitation, not that we're limiting God. Don't get me wrong, we're not trying to limit God. We're just trying to work in the respectful time limits of our own self and for others who are going to be impacted by the decision in which we make. We must allow ourselves enough time to sort through all the information that we've discovered on making this decision, seek counsel, we pray, we fast, and to set a deadline as far as trying to have the decision made by. Most life-changing decisions will need to be made within a determined amount of time, and I'll share a little bit about that after our last point today. But I will look more to that, like I said, later. But we need to have a limited time in order to come up with a decision on the direction that we're going for. A 5th principle is simply this, the prayer of faith. In James chapter number 1, verse 5 and 6, If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. And verse 6 says this, But let him ask in faith, not wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea driven by the wind and tossed. Once we have the information you need to make the decision, we must always, of course, seek God's wisdom. And not to say that we're not praying and asking Him for leadership and guidance and direction as we're going through this process, but we need to continue to gather information. And then when we get that information, we begin to ask and pray for the Lord for wisdom. Wisdom has been defined as knowing what to do with the knowledge that you have. So we get the knowledge, and then we ask the Lord for wisdom with that knowledge that we have in order to make a good, godly decision. Humanly speaking, it's difficult for us to accept a negative answer. We always want God to say yes to our request, yes to our direction, but we often have to be prepared when God says no. So we need to make sure that we are not wavering in our decision, are wavering in our answer. And when God gives you that answer, when God gives you that direction, don't look back. It says there in the latter part of that verse, it says, "For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea driven, and the wind is tossed." Once we surrendered to what God's leading is in that decision, don't look back and think, "Boy, I wonder if I made the right decision." Or I wish I could have changed that again. God's provision of wisdom is controlled by a surrendered will and will reveal the will of God. But the number 6, the last in this process that I have, is we need to have peace versus doubt. Peace versus doubt. In Romans 14:23, it says, "And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin." One commentator wrote this. He says, "Doubt is to the human spirit what pain is to the human body. It's a sign that something's wrong." He goes on and say it's a sign of something that is wrong, and all activity should stop until that doubt is removed. I've used that from the pulpit from time to time. If there is a doubt in your mind of whether or not you should go through with this, don't do it until God gives you that perfect peace. In my ministry, and since I've been saved 30 years, 26 years. I've been saved since 1994. Yes, I have to ask Scott when I was saved. 1994. And for those times there, I've had to make some decisions, some spiritual decisions that I had to use this process through. When I went off to Bible college, I really didn't know how to discern God's will until I got there, but I know I had to pray. I know I had to seek his leadership, and God directed when I was going off to Bible college. Another instance was in my very first ministry at Grace Baptist Church in West Columbia. I had no idea what the Lord's will was for me, but I yielded myself to whatever God would have for us. I saw biblical revelation. I saw a multitude of counselors. I put a time limit on, okay, Lord, I need to know this answer in this certain time limit, not to limit God, but to help me with my decision. And also that the fear versus doubt, or peace versus doubt. You need to have all these steps in a row. I remember when I was looking at a church up in Upper Pennsylvania. The church voted. It was a very high percentage to accept us to come. But as Lisa and we drove back home and we prayed about it. We didn't have that peace. There's still that doubt in whether or not to accept that position or to not. And we prayed for a week. We prayed for a good week, and the Lord just didn't give peace. And I believe it would have been outside of God's will if I would have went when I still had doubt in my mind of what God's will is for our lives. And then, of course, when God called us here to Waynesboro, leaving a church in South Carolina where our friends were, our loved ones were, and to come out here, we really had to seek the Lord's will. And God directed, God led, and this is where we're at today in Grace Baptist Church of Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. But I'm afraid sometimes too many Christians are kind of make these life-changing decisions in haste. They don't seek counsel. They don't go through a process or any process. And it's been very devastating in the results of their life. So I hope this has been helpful to you. It's been good for me to rehash this process. We need to have a yielded will, biblical revelation. We need to have a multitude of counselors, impose time limitations on getting the answer, to prayer of faith, to pray in faith with wisdom, not wavering, and also to make sure we have that peace without that doubt. Now, this is my process. This is probably not the only process. It may not even be the best process, but it is a process that has worked for me, and I just want to share that with you. Thank you.